Consciousness. Consciousness is the most subtle but yet very much discussed phenomena, not only in the arena of science but also philosophy, literature, yoga, psychology, and many more occult sciences. Why this consciousness is to be questioned in such a way? What is the importance of the consciousness? Because man has tried to understand consciousness in the most variable lingual terms. Consciousness means being aware of. But how to be aware of? What is to be aware of? When is to be aware of? These are all some questions which are increasing the subtlety of the concept of consciousness. Most of the people nowadays are thinking about consciousness. Consciousness is aware of being aware of. That means a person is always aware. He feels that aware of himself, his self, as a subject, as an object, and as an author of an action, and as the enjoyer of the resultant of an action. All these are all different facets of the consciousness only. Consciousness is all pervading, penetrating, universal, integral, functional. At the same time, consciousness is found to be very much divided, expanded, self-evolving, and self-deteriorating. All these things are considered to be something which is specific in consciousness. Now, we will try to analyze an idea of consciousness through a classic word, chit. This word chit is to move. Chit means chetane, in the movement. This is a Sanskrit word, a verb, whose noun form is Chaitanya. Consciousness means Chaitanya. Whatever is moving, whatever is said to be having a movement, whatever is found to have been aware of movement, is having Chaitanya. And the three states of awakening, dream, and sleep are said to be the stages of consciousness. Any type of friction or any type of response, outside and within, encompassing, encircling, and empowering, is called as consciousness. Thus, consciousness is tried to be understood differently by different people. For example, a person is looking at a flower. A flower is having consciousness. The person's body is having consciousness. The look is having consciousness. The awareness that he is looking at the flower is having consciousness. And that awareness is caused by the consciousness. That means the consciousness is extending from the terrestrial plane to the transcendental plane. All these are all like the points on the scale. It scales the universal, integral, all-pervading phenomena, which is found to be divided into different pieces, but at the same time functioning as an integral unit. If we take the human body, From the top to the toe, the entire body is having consciousness. It is a running thread. It is the Suradeha, Sushmadeha, and Karanadeha. Deha is simply a physical or physiological representation, but the reason behind it is consciousness. Consciousness is not the mind. Consciousness is not the soul. Consciousness is not the brain. Consciousness is not the body at all. Then what is consciousness? Consciousness is understood to be differently by different people at different times. Consciousness is so much subtle and at the same time very much intelligible. When it is intelligible, man thinks that he is aware of the consciousness. When it is subtle, he thinks that he is ignoring consciousness. That awareness and ignorance are the uppers and reverse of the two dimensions of the consciousness. For example, in the daytime, man looks at everything. In the night, even though he wants to look at the same thing with the same eye, it's not perceivable. So we can understand that perception is consciousness. In the sleep, the perception is there. In the state of awakening, the perception is there. In the dream also, the perception is there. The perception is consciousness. Consciousness is aware of the entire integral unit. The universe, the cosmos, including the terrestrial plane and the finite bodies, they are all equipped with the thread of the consciousness, the element of the consciousness. It is the friction and the function. It is the division and the integration. It is the subtle and awareness. It is intelligible and ignoring. In such a situation, how we are going to name a consciousness, distinguish a consciousness? Consciousness is simply understood through pro-cognitive identities. If one fails to recognize, it does not mean the consciousness is absence. The consciousness is always present. It is present everywhere. The consciousness is to be understood not in literal terms, not in lingual terms, not in psychological terms, not in sensory terms, because these are all having limitations of their own. They cannot express, they cannot receive, they cannot respond. But beyond this reception, beyond this response, beyond this every action and friction, beyond this every function and conception, there is a source of force, and that may be called consciousness. The concept of consciousness is the very existence of the fundamental identity of the entire universe. Because the universe is conscious of itself, it is blossoming, it is expanding, it is growing, it is decaying, it is becoming mortal, and it is dying. Again, it is taking a rebirth. All these particular things, which are classically distinguished as unpredictable, unobservable, and which are beyond the empirical evidence, is totally found in consciousness. Consciousness is an impregnable ignorance. At the same time, the consciousness is the unscalable intelligence. These two poles are the heights of consciousness. At the same time, consciousness sees terrestrial, atmospherical, divine, and transcendental also. It is the thought in the thought. It is the thought without the thought. It is the thought being the thought. It is the thought beneath the thought. And it is the thought behind the thought. Such a situation can be understood in consciousness as the subtlety of the subtlety. It is as big as the universe and as small as the atom. Anoraniya Mahatva Mahiya. It is very much static. It is very much tranquil. It is very much transcendental. It is very much primordial. At the same time, it is subatomic. And that is why man is failing to understand consciousness.